Okay, so we know that there's already libraries that are out there that give you the ability to traverse the DOM. But let's just sort of play around with this ourselves. Let's just sort of pretend that we were thinking about building something like this. And I'm just going to do this just so I don't even have to really set up an environment. I'm going to go in here and add a h1 tag. And we'll do a little bit of nesting here by specifying that we've got an unordered list. And we've got a list item. And I'll say hello. And world. And let's actually rename this to traverse the DOM. And I'm going to go in and put this in another div tag. Okay. So one thing that we could do is if we were going to go and write something out to traverse the DOM, let's actually start out by having some function. And again, we'll just do this with standard ES5 stuff called traverse. Okay. The fact is that the same way that we worked with binary search trees, where we sort of move from one binary search tree to the other, we're going to end up moving from one node to the other. Now, what we want to do is that we want to traverse the DOM starting from the top. And then, so the bottom line would really be this, is that we want to go in here. If we sort of think about what our algorithm is going to be, if we're going to sort of whiteboard this, even though I can't really do it with a whiteboard here. If you think about how this is going to work, what we want to do is we want to go in. If we don't pass any node in there, we want to get the body tag. Okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to look at the body tag and see if there are any children to the body tag. And for each of those children, we're going to want to go and traverse for each of those nodes, right? Everything coming in as a node, but we have an end case. Well, we have an end case where, if there's no children, there's no need to recursively go back in. But let's actually go over here. And just to sort of get started, we're going to pass in a node here. And we'll say console.log node. And I'll do console.clear over here just so things don't keep on showing up. I'll open up my console here. I'll close this HTML so I got a little room to work. And we'll go over here. And we're going to call traverse. Okay? So we've got undefined. Well, let's do a little work here to specify, hey, look, node is either going to equal node, or we're going to do a short circuit here. So if node is passed in, that's fine. If node is not passed in, let's use our document get elements by tag name, and we're going to get the body. And we'll go over here and we'll specify that this is going to be, we just want to get one of these. We should only have one of these. And if we look at this, we'll see that we have a node here. And we could just also verify that a node has a tag name, which is body, right? Nothing all that complicated about this, right? The other thing we want to do is we want to make this traversal method to be useful. And we might want to do different things when we're traversing the DOM. We might want to just collect all the nodes that are in the DOM. It's possible we might want to do that, or we might want to go and search for specific DOMs based upon their tag name or their class name or their ID or whatever else we might do with it. So let's actually do something else here. Let's pass in a function, okay? And when we go to traverse the DOM, we'll pass in a function. Well, we'll start out by being more specific and saying we want to start out at the top, and we're going to pass in a function, and we're going to get a node back, and we'll go over here and we'll say console.log, just so we don't see too much on the screen. We'll just look at the tag name for the node, right? We want to basically create, what we're doing here is we want to create an iterator that can iterate over the DOM. If we went to run this, again, we just end up getting back body here. Now, what we could end up doing here is that we could go over here And we could specify, or for starters at least, let's just say console, well, let's actually do this. I'm going to call fn with my node, and I'm back to exactly where I was before. But if I went over here and I said console.log node.children, and I'll get this information here. If I say length, I end up getting 2 here, which is kind of interesting. I would have sort of expected it to be 1, but I think what actually happens here with JSBin is that it actually is taking your script that you're writing here and automatically appending it below. But that's interesting to take a look at that. So what I want to do here is, first of all, we know that this node.children, if we look at this and we specify node.children and we tried to call for each on it, or see if for each existed, we'll see that it's not an array. Okay? Let's coerce it, or let's turn it into an array, right? We have our old friend here. We could say array, and we could say we're going to use the slice method on this array that we just created, but we're not going to call it on itself. We're going to end up calling it on the children of this node. And in fact, if you just end up doing this, and I say console.log, and I go over here and I specify for each, I'll see that this is a method and this is native code. I think by default, if you don't put the slice in there, it just, in essence, is really going to use 0 for that, and you get the entire array. But I've basically turned this sort of array-like creature into an array. So what I want to do here is now, once I end up doing this, what I'm going to do, real simply, is now that I can call for each on this, I'm actually going to call for each on this. Go over here. Right, I'm looping over these various nodes, and I'm simply going to go in here and call traverse with this node that I'm looping over and make sure that I end up passing my function. Okay? What I did was I just wrote a function that allows me to traverse the DOM. All right? Again, think about it. Don't go too deep. Just think about one level. If it works at one level, it's going to keep on working, right? That's what happens with recursion. Okay? Think about if our body tag had one node underneath it. Okay? Let's say it just had one div underneath it. So I go in here and I call my function with my body tag. I then go and I get that, I loop over this, I get that one div node, and I go in here and I call this again. It'll call my callback function with that one div node, and I'm done. Okay? If it worked going down one level, well, just imagine that second level also goes down another level. It's going to keep on working. As long as it works once, it's going to keep on working. There's no reason why it wouldn't, right? Again, whatever node goes in there, if it has children, it's going to get processed, and then its children are going to get processed. So you have your body tag, you have your div, you have your h1, and notice, once your UL ends up getting processed, it ends up going in there and processing its 2 children. Okay? If you wanted to, beat a dead horse a little bit, just so you could see this, if I went and I took this div, this UL, I put another one up here, went to go and run this, you'll see, again, it goes in here, it encounters this UL ends up having children, right? And it'll end up going down and processing them as well. So now we've got this method to go and traverse this object recursively, right? Does that make sense to everybody, right? Not a ton of code that's there. But now once we have this code that's there, let's leverage it. Let's leverage it. This code is very, very specific. Pass me in a node, okay? And if you don't pass me in a node, I'm going to start at the body, okay? Pass me in a callback function, okay? And I'm going to iterate. And let's go over here and let's get rid of this traverse function. And let's actually create another function, which we're going to call collect. And collect is actually going to give us a collection of all the nodes that we could end up doing something with. So what we're going to do internally here is that we'll create this collection, and we'll go in here and we'll call traverse with null, and we'll put a callback function in here which gets us a node. And every time that we end up going in here and getting a node, we'll say collection dot push node, right? And then we're just going to have to make sure when we end up calling collect that we return our collection. So that means if this is working correctly, we should be able to say collection equals collect, and if we say console.log collection.length, we should see a reasonable number, which is going to be 10. If we ended up going and looking at that first item in the collection, that's going to be our body tag. So it'll be body. That second item is probably going to be our div, right? The third item is probably going to be on our unordered list. The fourth item is going to be a list item. And if we wanted to, just to make sure, we could do inner HTML on this, and we see the word world, okay? So you have the ability, right, of now having this collect function. And so how could we end up going and, working with that? Well, let's just pretend that what we want to do here, let's get rid of this. Again, what we're doing here is we are doing composition of functions. We've got our iterator function, which is our traverse function. We've got our collect function, which is using that iterator function. And let's just go a step further because we've got this collection. Let's say we wanted to do something like LIs, and we wanted to go over here and have some kind of select function where we pass in a list item. And we'll just keep it simple. We'll put LI in uppercase. Again, that doesn't exist yet, but let's actually go and create it. Again, our expectation is if we end up doing that and we just want to select all of our list items, that's what you're really building in the, in the workshop. If we wanted to select all of our list items, what we could end up doing is we should see that we have 4 list items that are in this collection. So let's now create this select function. It becomes much simpler. We call select, and for now, we're just going to call select with a tag name. Again, we could call select with any number of things that we want to. We could pass another function into select that is going to tell us when, in fact, we want to get this specific node, right? This is all we're doing is having the ability to loop over this tree of items. So when we call select, what we can end up doing here is we could specify that first we're going to get all our nodes by calling collect, okay? And then we'll specify that what we're going to do is we're going to return, and we'll specify we're going to take these nodes and we're going to filter. This is going to be a node. Again, I call it node because that's what it is that we're looping over. And we go over here, and I'll keep it real simple here. I'll say we're going to return if your node.tag name is equal to the tag name that got passed in. And now if I end up calling this, I'll get my list items. If I say console.log lis.length, should end up being 4. The first one is going to be hello. right? The second one is going to be world, and so on and so forth. And then, again, this is just a problem if you break this down into pieces, right? How you could end up breaking this down. And again, there's nothing that would prevent you. We're not doing it. But there would be nothing that would say, hey, look, instead of passing in a tag name, you passed in some function, which is going to be your matching function. And instead of, going in here, if we wanted to do something like that, we could go over here and say, well, select, and we'll pass in a function that will take a node. And we could say we want to return node dot tag name is equal to list item. So if we wanted to do that, we're passing in, we could pass in a function instead. And when we call filter, we could specify that what we want to return when we end up calling our function with this node. And we end up getting the exact same results, right? Again, just different ways to call this. You could think of that like your, matcher function, and you could have, different matcher functions based upon what your selectors are. So again, there's nothing that really prevents you from opening up JSBin, exploring the DOM a little bit by using these methods. And again, not that you have to do that. There are methods that will allow you to do this already. But you could imagine that if you wanted to get a certain node based on not just its tag name, but its parent tag name, and that sort of thing, you have total ability to filter out whatever sort of node that you want with this method, right? I mean, if we change this to be a UL, right, then we're going to get our list items back here in our inner HTML. All right, so I just wanted to do that demo to sort of add a little bit to that workshop.